Hey everyone, so I read an article, I think it was 2 weeks ago, asking this question: should it be hard to elect the Speaker of the House? Now I wrote this in a more salient time because it was when Congress was struggling to elect a speaker. So I know this is sort of past, but it's still in my mind and still something I think I should touch on. And for those of you who didn't read my article, this would be a good video to watch. So I'm going to just briefly sort of lay out for you the answer to this question. I'll answer it first. Should it be hard to elect a speaker? Yes, for the most part, yes, it should be hard to elect a speaker. And let me explain why. So when the founders started this country, when they created the government we currently have, they created it from a very negative perspective of human nature. So they didn't believe that humans were naturally good. Actually, they sort of believed the opposite, that humans were naturally bad, very ambitious, and they were going to just sort of drive after their own power as much as they possibly could. Okay, well, that's a problem when you're creating a government. Now, obviously, we need government to protect us from each other, because if we're all ambitious and power hungry, then that's going to be a problem. So we need to create a government to sort of protect us from each other. Yes. However, we're taking the same people that needed government in the first place, right? And we're giving them power. And this is a problem. And this is the conundrum that our founders dealt with when they created government. They knew that they were taking flawed humans that need government and they were putting them in positions of power, only empowering them more to abuse and misuse the power that we've now given them. So what do we do about that? How do we prevent government abuse whenever government is given more power? Okay, so they were brilliant, and they thought to themselves, well, what if we use the very negative thing that we're afraid of against itself, right? And so Madison, if you've read Federalist 51, James Madison talks about this. So he says, we want to take ambition and we want to counteract it with other ambition. Because he explains, men are not angels, hence the need for government. However, government is not made up of angels either, hence the need for what we call checks and balances. So if you've heard of checks and balances, I'm just giving you the reason for checks and balances. And so checks and balances is this: we're going to take the federal government and we're going to break up the power. We're going to have a judicial branch, we're going to have a legislative branch, and an executive branch. Now, all of these branches are going to have motivations given to them through the Constitution to fight for power in their own branch. We're also going to break up some of these branches. So Congress, we're going to break it apart into two separate entities within one branch, because that branch is so powerful, it needs to be broken apart. And then we're going to have what we call a compound republic. This is what Madison said. A compound republic is that we have the federal government broken up, and then we have state governments, and the state governments are broken up, and then we have local governments, and we have county governments, and we have city governments, right? We have so many different levels of government, and every level of government is broken apart. And so what ends up happening? Well, we have a very slow, cumbersome government with reason. They actually created our government to be slow, to be encumbered so much that it could hardly get anything done. Why? Because what does government do? What does it mean for government to get something done? Well, it means that it makes law, right? And so if we want a fast, efficient, really quick government, that means we're going to have a government that's churning out thousands upon thousands of laws every single year. That's not what the founders wanted. So they made sure to sort of build 1,000 billion roadblocks in the way. Then they decided that Congress, we're going to look at the House now because I'm going to connect this to the Speaker, would be connected to different parts of society, okay? So the House is made up of 435 members who are elected by different districts. Now, each district has a very separate group of people that have different goals, different desires, different preferences, different ideologies, different party affiliations, okay? Every district is different. Different even topography, different economy, all these different things. And so you've got 435 members of Congress that are supposed to be representing these districts separately, individually, and specifically. This means that when Congress does something, I should rephrase that, when the House does something, it's going to be very hard, because not only do you have each individual House member's personal ambitions, fighting against the personal ambitions of others in the House, but you also have the very different districts that are going to be fighting for whatever it is that they want, right? Okay, so they wanted all of these different House members with very different preferences to be represented individually by all of these different House members. Did I just say that? So we have all these different House members representing different districts with different preferences, okay? So it's going to be difficult to get anything done in the House, right? Which means that electing people to be in charge of the way that the House functions should be difficult, right? Because number one, the House was given complete and utter control over how it creates its own rules and how it decides to make law. So how a speaker is elected is completely up to the House. How the rules are created is completely up to the House. Everything's up to the House. The Constitution leaves that to them completely, which means it's going to be very messy for them to come up with rules, to elect leaders, to decide what leaders to elect. The Speaker is the only position in the House that's actually constitutionally created. Okay, so it's going to be difficult. It should be difficult. If it's not difficult, then the system isn't working right? The founders never envisioned for our House to work like a monolith. And a monolith means everyone thinks exactly the same and everyone goes with exactly what everyone else is going with. How would that work? If that's the case, if we have a party that elects a speaker every single 2 years without any fight, just because it's the speaker to elect for this party, who are the people in the party actually representing? Are they representing their individual districts and the people there and their unique preferences and interests and ideologies? Or are they representing a party? Because if that's what they're doing, if they're just representing a party block, a monolith, then they're not representing the people at all, right? They're just representing a big party block. There's no such thing as a national agenda. It can't work. Our country's too big. Hence the reason we have power broken up so much. Hence the reason we have members of the House that are representing every small district, because there is no one size fits all in this country. That's just not going to work feasibly. That's why this country was created with the government it was created with. And so if we have members of the House just going with the monolith and electing a new speaker without any fight, without any discussion, without any debate, it's just a given, that is when we should be concerned. So it's actually a very good thing that it was hard to elect a speaker this time around, because guess what? That means the system was working like it was supposed to. It's supposed to be fraught with roadblocks. It's supposed to be messy because there's a ton, 435 people in there representing a whole bunch of different districts with different preferences and different people. It's going to be messy, and it shouldn't have really anything to do with party as much as it just should have to do with different preferences being given a voice. So, the long answer to my question was what I just went over. The short answer is, should it be difficult to elect a speaker? Sure. Everything in the U.S. government should be difficult. That's the way it was built to function.